Okay, so for this tutorial, we're going to go over creating a material. Now, in the last tutorial, we created a tutorial to show you how to replace a texture. Now, this texture can be altered through a material. Now, just to look at this, the material for the character is MAI underscore AMXX underscore body. This is a material instance. We're going to replace this with a material. So back up in the body base folder, we need a folder called materials. And inside of here, we're going to right click and choose material. And we're going to rename it MAI AMXX body. MAI AMXX body. Alright. So as you can see, it looks like a grid right now because this has no information inside of the material. So we're going to add some information in. So here, in this material, you have a node that you start out with in its graph. This node is for all of your material properties. As you can see, there's a pin for base color, metallic, specular roughness, etc. Right? Over here in the details panel, you will have specific information about your material. One of the things that needs to be checked for it to work in game with a skeletal mesh is use with skeletal mesh. Now, we want this to look different. We need to add some functionality in here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to navigate back to my textures and I'm going to drag this body texture in. Now, this creates a texture sample node which applies this texture to it. Every node you click on will have different information in the details panel that you can go through and alter to your liking. I'm going to hook up this to base color because this is a base color texture. Now you can see this material has taken on the form of that texture. You can also change the view of it. You want a cylindrical view, spherical, plane, cube, or you can have a custom mesh applied. I will be going over this in a later tutorial, but for now, I will import a skeletal mesh that I already have exported. I do not actually believe this is the correct one, so I will be redoing this anyways. But I believe this is for the old version of the game. So here's my character, right? This is the session skater, but I believe it's the last updated version. If I save this, and I now go look at this material that I have, and put it on the character, you can see that the skin matches up. Now, here's where materials become awesome. You see how it's kind of got some weird shines to it, and it doesn't look exactly right? What we are going to do is grab some other files that I've already exported. Back in the customization, characters, AMXX, body base textures, there is also a metallic gloss and a normal texture. I want those in my texture folders. Now we have these here. If I also Okay, so metallic gloss needs to have sRGB unchecked. Very important. Do that. Very simple thing to do, but make sure you do it. Now, if I take both these textures, I can drag them into my material, and then I can hook them up. RGB for normal. Now, metallic glosses are a little different. R needs to go to ambient occlusion. G needs to go to roughness, and B needs to go to metallic. Now, when I hit save, you'll watch this change. See how it looks a lot different now? I actually believe that this one is hooked up wrong, because this looks metallic, and it shouldn't. None of this should be metallic. Let's just unhook that. There we go. So you notice now he has more detail to his abs and everything. Let me disconnect this and show you here. See the difference there? This isn't normal. This adds some shading to simulate height. Make it appear like it has different edges and angles that aren't actually on the mesh. So this is one scenario where a material would make sense if you wanted to replace something. Now, another scenario, I'm going to do a skateboard. So here in view model, I'm going to go, instead of characters, I'm going to choose skateboards. I want to change a deck graphic. And I'm going to change, for the hell of it, I'll do a blind board. We have a material. We have this MAIDG blind OG ripped green 825, whatever. Over here in my project, I'm going to create the same folder structure. Inside customization, I need skateboards. Inside skateboards, I need deck graphics. I spelled that wrong. That would destroy this. Okay, inside deck graphics, I need blind. And inside blind, I need materials. Now I'm going to create a material. And I'm going to name it the same as this. MAI underscore DG underscore blind underscore OG ripped underscore green underscore 8250. So because I am replacing a material, the textures associated with this material do not need to replace something in game. That is because this object knows what it's going to reference when you apply something to the material. If I add something in here, it keeps track of the file name and folder location of that file. The in-game materials specifically reference the textures that they have in their material. So in-game, the AMXX body material references these textures. So these textures need to be in the right place for this material to properly use them. Now, my material does not need to use their textures. It can use brand new textures, which is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to create my own folder, and I'm going to call this animated. So in here, I can add whatever textures I want to add. So I have some textures that I used for someone else that I will bring in. I'm gonna be honest though, I don't really remember where they are. So I will use this Goku texture I have here. This is what is called a sprite sheet. We look at this, it has rows and columns of different pictures. Each one is a different frame. And these are what are used to make GIF images. A GIF will play from frame 1 to frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it'll just keep doing that to play like this. So, in here, I'm going to take this texture and drag it in. Now I have this texture here. So, in my material, I can now take this texture and drag it in. If I connect it, and here let's drag in a skateboard real quick so we can look at this. Alright, so we have a skateboard here. Alright, so this material, if I click browse on the material, it will take me over here. It will take me directly to this file. Makes things really easy to navigate around. If I put this material on the skateboard, you'll see that it looks just like the sprite sheet. Now that's a problem. We don't want it to do that. So what I can do is create what's called a flipbook node. And this is not a tutorial on how to make animated stuff. This is a tutorial showing you what you can do with materials. And there's many, many, many things you can do with tutorials. So what I'm going to do now, take this texture and plug in the UV here of this texture. So right now, if I apply this, it starts moving, but it's not moving right. So the problem with that is we need to tell it how many rows and columns it has. So if we look at this texture, it has 3 columns and 5 rows. So you create what is called a constant, or hold the number 1 and click. You can then set a value. We have 3 columns and we have 5 rows. So right here, 5 rows and 3 columns, right? If I save this, now you can see it's animated, but it's kind of stretched out and funny. So what we can also do is create what's called a custom rotator. Now this is what this is going to do, is it's going to rotate the texture however I decide to rotate it. I need a texture coordinate, which is basically telling me the coordinates along the texture where I want to rotate from. Or sorry, this is the scale of the texture. Now the rotation center, holding 2 and clicking, I can create a vector 2 instead of a vector 1. This is a constant, this is a constant 2. I can plug this in here. I want it to rotate from 0, 0, which I believe is the center. I may have to change that. I want another constant 1 for rotation angle. Now this is a 0 to 1 value. So I want it to rotate 90 degrees. So 90 degrees of 360 is 1/4 or 0.25. So if I do 0.25 and save, this should now rotate sideways. Now we have an animated deck that is facing the right direction. I'm going to save this. Yeah, save that. I don't know why that's not saved. And that. Now, in my project here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this characters folder to make things easy. Now I'll delete this characters folder. All right. Now, once that's done, I can do the same as with the textures. I can go to File and Cook Content for Windows. Now this is cooking. We navigate back to our project folder here. I go to the cook content, now that it just completed, our stuff is all on customization. So I'm going to right click and press. I'm going to name this Animated DBZ Deck. Now, I need to double check real quick. So I have an animated grip that uses that same texture, so this could cause a problem. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of that just to prevent any issues. The reason for this is Session Mod Manager reads file names and places things based off their name. Because that mod also used this texture, when I import this mod, it could, instead of placing the texture here where it should, it could place it in the other folder where that other mod had the texture at. And I don't want that. I want to make sure that it goes to the right place. So this is a really good example of naming as well. I named this Goku. I should have named it something unique that would not be anywhere else in the project. Something like text underscore DBZ anim deck Goku, right? Like, it has a unique name. This is probably not going to be found anywhere else. So if I were to import this, I wouldn't have any conflicts because nothing else would have it. I'm not going to recook. I just deleted the other mod to make it easy. But this is something you should practice. Unique file names. Now I'm going to import this. And it's right here. If I go in game now. Alright. Shortcut to the skate shop. If I go to skateboard gear, deck graphics, and I find blind, I should have what I'm looking for. But the problem is, I don't. Now, there could be many reasons for this. Personally, I'm not sure what this reason was. For some reason, this didn't work. Let's try recooking with a brand new name and see if that fixes the problem. We could open content folder, and we could navigate to that skateboards folder and see if maybe I don't have my texture, but I do. So, because this is a material instance, it could be having a problem referencing things. My material is not a material instance. It is a material, which they are two different things. I will show you now. If I right click on this and choose create material instance, this is actually an instance. If I open this, it doesn't look the same. Instead of having that graph, I just have small details over here that I can change. I can manipulate. And if I open the material, this is what it looks like. Now, I could do something like this. I can change this to a parameter and call this base color. Okay? If I save this now and go back to the instance, I now have a parameter called base color where I can change the texture applied. I don't have any textures in here to replace it with and don't feel like adding any, but that is something you can do. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this to mat_dbz_nm master. Now, this is not a file that is in the game, but it is a file that I can add to the game. This will never get loaded because nothing is ever referencing it. But I can use it as a master file to replace their instance with my own. So, oops, okay. If you ever have a problem where you try to rename something and it tells you there's already an asset at this location, right click on content and choose fix up redirectors in folder. Now if we go back there and try renaming it again, it will work just fine. So we now have an instance with the same file name as in the game. So I will now save all and I will cook content for Windows. I'm going to go back into my mods list and delete the previous one we attempted. And now I am going to rezip the customization folder, rename it, and re-import it. So now we did not replace their instance with a material, we replaced it with another instance. Hopefully, this fixes the issue. Now, because this is a new deck, it could be set up completely different, and I might need to do a different method for this. I have never tried to replace one of these before. So let's find out if this works. Still does not work. This is very interesting. Huh. Oh, I remember the problem now. New project. I'm not used to this. All right. So session requires a project setting that I forgot about. In your project settings, you need to change share material shader code to be false. So now if I save this and recook, this should work just fine. It actually should work just fine like this. Fix up redirectors. Back here to be a material. There we go. All right, now let's try to recook. So one of the biggest things you will find in any form of game development is troubleshooting. And this was a very good example of troubleshooting. Typically in a tutorial, you'd see people just show you the exact method, and if it doesn't work for you, then you're kind of screwed. I don't mind making mistakes, and I don't mind people thinking that I'm not doing something right, because what I can do is go back through and figure out what the problem is, and I can solve it. And that is something that all developers need to know. You need to know how to fix a problem, not just do things. Now that this is done and cooked, third time's a charm, right? Delete the animated deck that we had in here, drag in the new one, import, and load your map. There we go. So the whole problem we had was that material shader code issue. Now, the reason I forgot about that is because I have one project I work in with all of my mods, and I never have to change that setting because it's already changed. So coming over to a new project, I kind of forgot to change it, which is okay. So that code allowed the material to work just fine. I replaced it. I didn't need to create an instance. Some scenarios you do need to create an instance. For example, with tutorials in the future I will be making for the physics menu, you will need to replace a material instance with a material instance, otherwise it will not work. And that is because of the method I have set up for reading files in my physics menu. But this will conclude the material replacement tutorial. The next one that we will be working on will be a mesh replacement. So I will see you all then.